Hey, let's talk pest management since we're getting closer and closer and closer to that beautiful summertime weather. Let's talk about IPM, which stands for Integrated Pest Management. Now, there are 5 methods to IPM. I like to start at the bottom because that's where you should apply these methods. Um, Starts off with prevention, and then cultural sanitation, physical, mechanical, biological, and then right up there at the top is chemical. It's the very last one we want to use, right? Now, there's a 5 step approach when you're heading out to your garden. You're heading out to your garden, you're monitoring, you're scouting for pests, you're determining pest identification. If you don't know what a pest is, or you don't, let's start that. The definition of a pest in the garden uh, is really wide because a pest in the garden is only really identified as a pest to you. All insects are really beneficial to other insects. So, identify what is a pest in your garden. Identify the pest or host accurately. If you don't know or having trouble identifying a pest, you can take a picture and send it down to an extension master gardener, and they will evaluate it, identify it, and then let you know. Um, the third one being access. Consider if any action threshold has been reached, is the pest density, or if any population level at which a control measure should be implemented. This is your threshold. What is your threshold? You got to understand that good pests need to eat on bad pests, bad organism, or good organisms feed upon bad organisms. Uh, so there has to be a give and take in the garden. There's going to be some pests, and then there's going to be some good pests coming to get those pests. So, what is your threshold? And then when it's overpopulated, that's when you move on to the next one. Develop and implement using your 5 IPM methods or strategies. And then the very last one is you're going to evaluate the success of the treatment, track and modify for best results. You may have to switch some things around from time to time. Now, like I said, at the bottom was prevention. So, prevention is the most economical and easiest pest control method. As Benjamin Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Variety. Choose a variety of plants to increase the biodiversity in the landscape. The more variety you have, the less likely you will have of any one pest affecting all your plants at one time. Increasing biodiversity also provides more food sources and habitat niches for beneficial insects that will help provide biological control of pests. Now, for people planting in northern Nevada, California, I recommend you go to your look up your native plants. Go to your local nursery, county nursery, Washoe nursery, and see what native plants and trees they have, and try to incorporate that into your landscape. That invites biodiversity, increases your biodiversity in your garden. Let's go to cultivars. Choose pest resistant plant varieties. Resistant cultivars are those that repel, are unattractive to, or otherwise are unsuitable as a food for certain pests, or that will withstand feeding by certain pests with little reduction in yield or quality. Let's go to the next one. Culture controls and sanitation. Culture controls seek to manage your landscape for the plants you do want and making it as difficult as possible for pests to be successful. The most effective and most important of all your practices is to observe what is going on in the garden. Cultural methods of suppressing pest problems in the landscape include good sanitations, measures to keep plants healthy, eliminate pest access, proper soil preparation, rotating crops, interplanting, timing planting dates to avoid pests, managing weeds, and planting trap crops. A lot of these we'll go over here in a minute. Keeping plants healthy. Keeping plants healthy and preventing plant stress helps plants to better withstand and repair the damage caused by an insect or mite pests. Some evidence indicates that healthy plants resist infestation by pests better than plants with low vigor. Have you ever looked at a sick plant before? I have. I've looked at many sick plants, and you know what sick plants do? They promote the worst bugs, the worst diseases. It's just, yeah, yep, I agree with that slide right there. Rotation. Planting two similar crops in successive years tends to increase pest problems. Many vegetables are closely related and have the same pests and diseases. Interplantings. Avoid placing all plants of one kind together. Instead, spread them throughout the garden. Consider alternating groups of different plants within rows or patches. Insects that become severe on cabbage will probably also infest nearby mustard, broccoli, and collards, but they may not spread to a cabbage planted on the other side of the garden. Hint, hint. Planting dates and insect degree days. Some insects do not overwinter locally but migrate each year. Time planting so that most of the crops will avoid the peak of insect migrations. Early planting of sweet corn may reduce occurrence of corn earworm, especially if the crops are harvested before July 15th. Delay planting warm weather crops until after the soil has warmed to avoid seed and rots and promote vigorous growth. Trap crops. Trap crops. Another way to manage insect pests is to plant a crop that is very attracted to insects and then treat that crop with an insecticide. Trap crops for squash bugs can be as simple as a variety of squash they prefer, planted on the edge of a garden away from the squash plants. So basically, like it says, you're going to grow something that all insects like, grow it away from your garden, don't treat it, let them attack it, and then you kill them with a pesticide. I don't like that idea because you're still spraying pesticide around the ground. So I like the idea of a trap crop and then killing it with something else, maybe something more natural. And we can go over that at a different time. Limitations of cultural management. The use of cultural controls for pest management requires advanced planning on the gardener's part. Crop rotation is a valuable culture method for reducing insect and disease issues, but many home vegetable gardeners do not have the room to sufficiently implement this practice. Where space is limited, it may be the best to allow the vegetable garden to lie fallow for a year or two or more. Consider raised beds with new soil or plant in containers when you know a disease problem exists. Mechanical or physical controls. These are hand picking and hand pulling, cultivation, which is plows, hoes, mowers, fences and barriers, traps, control burns, water sprays, and irrigations. Those are all forms of mechanical and physical control. Biological controls. Biological control in IPM is a process of reducing a pest population by using predators, parasites, or disease organism pathogens that ordinarily occur in the greatest single factor in keeping plant feeding insects from overwhelming the rest of the world is that they are food for other insects. Parasites are organisms that live on or in the body of a living organism called a host, from which they get their food during at least one stage of the parasite's life cycle. The parasite can gain enough nutrients and resources to survive without killing the host or preventing it from reproducing. Parasites tend to have a very short life cycle. Limitations of biological management. Biological controls using one living organism to control another living organism. Biological control agents can reduce the spread of an infestation, but they rarely control or eradicate the infestation. So that's very important about biological management. They rarely control or eradicate an infestation. I put an infestation. Chemical management. If the pest has been correctly identified and is still a problem after other management strategies have been implemented, chemical options may be considered as a last resort. Keywords being last resort. Now, the signs on these labels, just a quick informational for you. The single word caution indicates those pesticides that are low in toxicity. These pesticides are available for anyone to purchase and use. Some warning pesticides are available to everyone to purchase and use. Pesticides available to everyone for purchase and use are called general use pesticides. Many warning pesticides and danger poison pesticides are restricted use pesticides and are only used for purchase and used by certified or licensed pesticide applicators. Limitations of chemical management. Misuse of pesticides can result in unintentional damage to people, pests, livestock, wildlife, and the environment. Repeated use of the same chemical can kill all the insects or weeds vulnerable to the active ingredients, leaving only the strongest to reproduce. Did you hear that? The strongest will reproduce. This results in pests quickly evolving resistance to the chemicals. So pests can start to, especially if you don't use them correctly, they can start to build a resistance to chemicals. Pesticides can kill beneficial insects and describe plants as well as insects and weeds, pest species. So remember that when you're spraying pesticides, they can also kill all the beneficial insects and organisms that you need for a thriving plant. It's kind of give and take, right? When you're using chemicals, it just, I don't know. So now you can formulate your IPM plan. When you're going out to the garden, identify your pests. If you're having issues identifying pests, you can take pictures of them and send them to your local Master Gardeners extension. They are nationwide. Um, you want to identify the pest life cycle when you're doing identifying pests. You want to get your action threshold, and then you want to develop your plan using the methods, and then track your results. And that is my slideshow. It was just a quick IPM for those that have no clue about IPM. Maybe you learned something. If you did, let me know. And I hope you have a great day. Take care.